But the director is the vision, the director is the storyteller, the director is ultimately the puppet master, and it is the director's vision for what ends up on the screen, both in theme and treatment and texture and subject matter and all of it. Tracy Droz Tragos, and I'm here at the Dallas International Film Festival, and I just screened my documentary, Rich Hill.
My name is Diana Whitten, and I'm the director of Vessel. It's my first feature film, and it just premiered here at South by Southwest.
My name's Cynthia Salzman-Mondell. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, and I've always been interested in photography, and that's really, I think, how I got into film.
I did not go to film school. I did my undergrad at Tufts. I was an English major and a fine arts major with a focus in photography. And I had done a lot of still photography, documentation photography over the years for fun. And when I went to graduate school, by the time I got to graduate school, I had been living in New York for less than 10 years, but had been working as a production designer because it was a job I was able to get when I got to New York. I was crafty and I could work in props more than anything. But I had wanted to shift my focus away from the narrative and television world that I had been working in to something more political. So I went back to grad school at the New School for International Media. And it was a much more intellectual approach back into documentary film as opposed to a production-based approach.
I mean, heavy equipment, and and that's, I think, one of the things that's kept women out of some of this, some of the business, because
it was yes, that was the first interview that I ever gave using a video camera, the first time I shot Rebecca.
But we really wanted it to be beautiful and cinematic. We chose to shoot with one camera, but a very high-end, we shot on the Red Scarlet, and the idea was that if we needed cutaways or needed to, that we could punch in, it was almost like two cameras because it was such a big 4K image that we would be able to pick out little things. But yeah, just one camera, because that's all we could afford, because it was expensive enough for that one.
Do you think that?
Now the equipment's, you can use it, you can pick it up, it's much more user friendly. At this, and she was talking about women's issues. Real women's issues. She had moved like 30 times. She had 5 kids. Her husband moved her down to Dallas, and the night he moved her down, he left her with 5 kids, no money. She didn't have credit cards, nothing. And so this was something that really struck a chord in me, and I wrote a humanities grant, and when you write a humanities grant, you're also working with scholars, because they have to give their points of view, and it helps you broaden your point of view. It's not like you're just going there with an angry, you're really looking at issues in a way that you're uncovering issues in a very deep and important way, that you can process them and you can actually look at how changes can be made and understanding them. So
yeah. I don't necessarily feel that as a woman filmmaker, the only subject that I can cover is women and girls. And for me, the interest was really these families. And of course, there were men and women in these families. And we chose ultimately to tell the story from the perspective of these 3 kids who were boys, because we were really drawn to them, and we were really drawn to their specific challenges, and they were different from girls. They were facing a lot of violence and feeling violence within themselves, and that was important.
So, what I was going to.
Scratch it.
Okay.
Who Remembers Mama is a film about displaced homemakers, about women who depended on their husband's income, and and when their husbands left them, they were the new poor, basically. Because of the new laws that it was easier for husbands to leave. And they were basically replacing their wives with a younger version of them. And some of them wanted their wives to move out and keep the kids. You know, and they wanted their house and the kids. And as one woman said, she said she wanted my silver. And when she said that, it was like, oh my God. You know, but it showed you that she was just being replaced. She was an object. And so he was replacing her with a younger version. None of these men left without having somebody, which was really interesting. I mean, we were really tough, you know, and trying to be nice, but really trying to make changes and so I saw, you could see what film can do, you know, I mean, you know, it can really make a difference. It can really raise people's consciousness. It can really make, you know, politicians, you know, stand up and really, you know, have to be responsible.
I don't think my identity as a filmmaker is specifically coming from a place of, you know, coming from this definition of being, I am a woman, you know, I work well with women, I grew up with sisters, I have a lot of women on my team, I also have men on my team. I'm sure my experiences have added up to that perspective that I have, and some of them are gender fueled, but it's not the primary motivation for me. I think it would be so interesting to see what a male director would have done with the story and to compare them.
I can't speak for all women filmmakers. I can speak for me as a filmmaker, and I can say that there is absolutely, you know, my stamp that was different from Andrew's stamp, and we would say the same thing. I mean, it was a collaboration, and, you know, I had a connection with the mothers in large part, and that allowed us to have a certain access, and the boys treated me with a kind of respect, and also we kind of cut through some of their kind of bro, macho, posing stuff that they did more with Andrew and kind of didn't do with me because of my mom's status, and I could kind of, you know, cut through that and say, you know, let's be more honest and let's get to what, you know, is really going on here. So, you know, so I would say that that's my stamp, and that came from a place perhaps less of being a woman than being a mother, which obviously I suppose those are tied together, but yeah.
Yeah, people ask because some of the footage is quite volatile. The crowds are quite volatile when you see the footage. And I think for me, what happened is in those moments where there were crowds and there were protesters, a certain adrenaline kicked in, and I don't remember fear. I remember exhilaration. That said, I also had a camera between me and anyone who might have wanted to hurt me, and we've seen a lot in past years, you know, with Occupy, with, you know, with everybody having a camera phone, you know, people think twice about hurting you if you have a camera in their face. So I see my camera as a shield so far. Sure. The word feminist has been thrown around so much. Of course I'm a feminist. Do I demand that other people call themselves that to be feminists? No, not necessarily. I think people can identify themselves however they want and still be doing really great work to advance women's rights. But I have no problem with that word. Sure.
What does it mean?
I would tell them what to roll on. Yeah, like, yeah, you can't. Yeah, that's, you know, they're because they would be doing each other's hair and talking, and they would be talking some serious stuff, you know, and some serious things would be coming out. It's like how women talk. I mean, we could be, you know, you go to get a manicure or pedicure, you can find out about people's divorces, see their love life, their, you know, they just came back from chemo. I mean, you find these things out in a different way than maybe a male reveals it, because we communicate differently.
Yeah.
It just depends on the sensitivity of the person. I mean, I did a film called The Ladies' Room, and I went to different restrooms and just rolled camera, and the things I got were pretty deep. I mean, they were really deep. And, you know, and it took me a long time to edit that film.
It was in some part observation, and in some part conversation. But you know, for the most part, our side of things, you know, we didn't include our voice and our presence in it. I mean, I had made a personal film, so I very much wanted to try my hand at doing something that I wasn't in. I think in part after making that, I needed to go dark for a little while, and just because it's intense. And I think I think I'm more respectful and sensitive for the subjects now in Rich Hill because I've been through that experience and I know what it's like, not just to be in the film, but then to share it with others and have people comment on it and feel like they know you and, you know, maybe don't really, or, you know, just the strange ways that it feels sometimes.
Someone asked me the question, would this film be a different film if a man had directed it? And I thought that was an interesting question. I think there were certain times while filming where I needed to access a very specific empathy that allowed me to back off from situations. Could a man do that? Of course. But I know that that's what I used in order to read the room and to keep the trust of the people I was working with and filming and to keep the trust of the women that we were filming. And to make them know that I wasn't there to exploit any of them. I think it would be so interesting to see what a male director would have done with the story and to compare them. I don't think I shoot from that. I don't think my identity as a filmmaker is specifically coming from a place of, you know, coming from this definition of being, I am a woman, you know, I work well with women, I grew up with sisters, I have a lot of women on my team, I also have men on my team. I'm sure my experiences have added up to that perspective that I have, and some of them are gender fueled, but it's not the primary motivation for me.
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
There's a couple things. One is documentary films don't really get reviewed unless they're going to have a national airing somewhere, okay? So it's like your distribution. So you have to look at that part. It's not just the subject. So like Sisters of 77 got in the New York Times front page art section, I think above the fold. And it was really cool because somebody called me and said, Cynthia, you're in the New York Times. So I thought it was just like a little TV listing. And I called this, like I had an intern coming in. I called Sally and said, Sally, I know you stop at Starbucks. Pick up a New York Times, please, and I'll pay you back. I was like, I thought I died and gone to heaven that day, knowing that, you know, the next day, you know, it would be that they put fish, you know, and coffee grinds in it. But it was really, really exciting to get that kind of publicity, and but it's very hard to get anything, you know, mentioned about your films. I mean, unless you're going to have airings, and even then, it's still 13 Years, War and Peace. Okay, that's just a film about teenagers and parents.
Okay.
We were trying to do an anthropological look at teens. And it was when our daughter Vanya was a teenager, and she wasn't easy. I don't think she is ever easy, but she's a wonderful person. Wonderful. She's very talented, and she does a whole lot. I'm very proud of her. But I'm doing a film right now that I feel extremely passionate about. It's about women's life stories told through their shoes. I think shoes have a great deal to say about who you are and your identity and your memories. And every shoe has a story, and every woman has both. And I think it's an extremely feminist film. I started this film because my mother was dying of cancer, and she was on a morphine drip, and she was really out of it. My sister and I found a pair of brand new red high heels in her closet. We took those shoes and we showed them to her, and said, "Ma, look at these shoes. You've never worn them." And she got up and started talking to us. It's like those shoes were like, we don't know what happened, but she just, it was like we had our mother back for a couple hours. It just, there's something that those shoes, you know, did for her. And it gave us some hope, and we put them on her dress, and we said, if you get better, you're going to dance again. She never did, but I just never forgot what those shoes did for her. And so shoes represent transforming yourself. They represent fantasy. They represent some hope and dreams. And so it's a film that I'm, you know, trying to do. And I had a shoe confessional at the Dallas Museum of Art where I actually built a shoot with volunteers, built a shoe confessional, and women came in and they told their stories. It was that you go into this booth and you sit there, and there are two cameras that are running, but you don't see the cameras, you just see a big monitor, and the only thing you can see is your shoes. And then you can tell stories, and if you don't have a story to tell, I had developed questions with University of Sheffield in England because they had a 3-year study on people's identity with shoes, so they helped me with questions. And so you're talking about working with academics, so I've been working with them. Sort of were vagabonding, and then we hooked up with some of Alan's friends, and we ended up in Morocco for a while, and then I got really, really ill. I thought I was dying, but it turned out I was pregnant. And so, anyway, that was another story. Anyway, we ended up on a filmmaker friend's farm in Vermont, and I was 7.5 months pregnant by the time I got back to the States. No, I mean, you've got to understand, it was a whole different time. It was the 60s. I mean, mentality, you flowed, you did things. I mean, I don't know anybody we didn't plan anything. We just had passion and did stuff. I mean, just like, you know, there was like, did I want to have kids? Yeah, I mean, I'd never thought about having a kid. It just sort of happened. It was unplanned. I mean, I was using a diaphragm, and I didn't speak Spanish, and I ran out of diaphragm cream, and I bought what I thought was diaphragm cream, and it turned out to be dandruff cream. So finally, it doesn't have any dandruff. You know, that was really hard. We had one car. I used to have to go to interviews on a bike, and I would take my daughter on the back seat and my dog by my side, and sometimes have the dog watch her. And then I used to drive her to every Mother's Day out, and when I couldn't find childcare, sometimes I'd drop her off at KRA, because I would say it's his responsibility too, you know, and I need to work. So yeah, so it was hard. It was a juggling act, and you're trying to create a community, and you're alone, and you don't have any friends, and plus I didn't always have a car, and so that was the other thing, you know, so I did a lot of walking and a lot of bicycling.
Yeah, it's I really enjoy traveling to the festivals. It's also, to be honest, a bit of a grind. It's a lot of work. So I feel like if I were in a different place in my life, I probably would feel differently about it. But it's hard to be away from home.
Well, finally, since we had no family here and no help and little money, she slept on the editing room floors. But she slept underneath a lot of steam bags, and so she's been on a lot of, you know, sets, and sometimes I've been less than kind to her sometimes, because I've had to be like, stop it, shut up, you know. I'm not your mother today, and I remember saying that to her once, and I thought, oh God, why did I say that, you know? But it's really, really hard when you have a kid and you're trying to work and to focus, and you have a whole crew that you're trying to work with, and you have the people that you want to film, and you're thinking about camera, you're thinking about sound, you're thinking about light, and you want it to be the best you be, and you don't have, you know, you don't necessarily have help. So yeah, so she's been thrown into stuff a lot. And I actually never thought she wanted to go into film, because she really...
Yeah. I took time off to be a full-time mom. My mother worked my entire life, and I didn't get to hang out with her as much as I really wanted to. I still don't. She's still working, and she's wonderful, and I'm proud of all that she does. But I missed her a lot. So I wanted to do things differently, and maybe the pendulum kind of swings. So maybe it swung a little too far that way. But we make choices, and I'm glad that I did it. So when I had my first daughter, I quit work. I was making a pilot series, and I quit and had my first daughter, and stayed at home with her and nursed her, and did all this very kind of attachment parenting stuff with her. And then I had my second daughter and stayed at home with her and did the same thing. And then when my second daughter entered nursery school, that was when I started this project, or a little before, a few months in anticipation of her starting school. I was like, okay, now it's time. I've done it, and I really need to use a different part of my brain and get back into it. At home, I have 3 dogs and 2 daughters and a husband. He's sort of always the last in the line, but I have a family. No, I didn't travel with them. For me, I really, especially when I'm shooting, I was making the film, I had to focus in a kind of way that I really can't when I'm with my kids. I mean, when I'm with my kids, I'm taking care of them. They trump. So, they'll interrupt me, and I can't do that when I'm working. So, or when I'm shooting. I mean, I can work a certain part of the day when they're at school, when I'm at home. But, I'm working 14-hour days when I'm shooting, and I just have to focus and be with the people that I'm making my film about.
So how many times did you shoot, or what was it?
We shot about once every 6 weeks for anywhere between 5 to 8 days, every 6 weeks for 20 months.
And whose project it was, but I can remember one time we took Vanya to on a set on Venus, Texas. It was west of Hester Street, and we were filming in Venus, Texas, and neither one of us was watching her, but I thought we had brought a babysitter with us, and somehow we couldn't find her. And Venus had a very strange feeling to it, okay? It just had a strange feeling. And it was one of the few times I can still feel the panic, and the whole crew, and we found her like 5 blocks away on a playground, playing. She just wandered over there. And so, I don't remember how old she must have been 8 years old. But I was working, he was working, and so we weren't thinking of her.
Right. I just had a set. Maybe 2. But that's it. So what do you think is the secret to your
Stupidity. That's not right. No, we haven't made very much money over the years, doing this, and we've learned to live as well as we can. We sent a daughter to college. Not sure how we did that, but we did, because she went to many colleges. We've just worked, passion maybe, and really not knowing. I mean, when I look at what we've done, I don't know if I could do it again. And yet, I'm sort of trying so hard to get this other one off the ground. And it's and it has probably more commercial acceptance than most of our films, the Soul Sisters. And it's so important to women. It's so empowering to have women tell their story. And the stories are so wonderful. They really are. An artist, a filmmaker, a wife, a mother, a grandmother, I guess that's how I identify myself. And Jewish is part of my culture. I mean, it's part of my life. I mean, I grew up Jewish.
Right, Right. That's what I'm interested in. I mean, I feel like, the universal is in the particular. So if I can get as up close as possible, that's what I care about. And I feel like that really can bring people together. I'm not very good about the bird's eye view on things. I mean, maybe I'll make a film like that someday, but really what I care about is human connection. I think I'm always fascinated with themes around family, and probably that comes from my own feelings of disconnection and family longing. But I think filmmakers that can put something that they are themselves grappling with into their films, it becomes, they're better films.
Yeah, like Margaret Brown, she said to me,
There are a lot of qualified women filmmakers out there who are smart. I mean, we should be making a lot of films.
What I went to 13 colleges in 1 year and showed that film and talked, and it was the way women communicate is so different, because most of the people that these women were telling their intimate stories to, they had never met before, never. They had they just flushed the toilet, came out, started looking at themselves in the mirror, and somebody would say something, "Oh, your dress is up," and then, or somebody would be crying. "Well, why are you crying?" The woman just didn't communicate about. She had to tell her story, what happened to her, and so it's like these. Oh my God, she's telling this intimate stuff to somebody, and most of these people did not know each other.
Maybe.
I have also recently signed with a commercial production company, which is something I was talking a lot to Carolyn Labresco, who's one of the senior programmers at Sundance, actually on the airplane. And she is one of the women that did the study and has worked on that study that you referenced. And she was talking about what I should get out of Sundance, get out of the Sundance experience. And we were talking a lot about sustainability, and I was like, oh gosh, how sustainability. And one of the things that she talked about was women being represented, so represented by agencies, and that not a lot of women are represented, and that commercials, that if women can do commercials, that's a way to be sustainable. And mostly men do commercials, so it's a little secret that men are doing all these commercials, making money, and then they're able to do these other things. And so with that in my head, I was approached at a Women in Film panel by a woman who runs a commercial production company. And I was, I think I normally would have been very confused by that, but with Carolyn's voice in my head, I said, absolutely, yes, let's talk. So anyway, I'm thinking about ways to be sustainable and to kind of look out for myself.
I actually wrote my master's thesis on activist use of the offshore space, which led to a case study in Women on Waves, which led to this film. So. It's a great way to build community around the film, and since we are really interested in collaborating with organizations on the ground and having the film help to advance their agendas, it's all about making those relationships, and they often start on lines. Women on Waves is an international NGO. They're based in the Netherlands, and their main mission is to get information about safe abortion to women around the world, especially women living in situations where access is restricted. And the first method they used to do this was to sail a ship to countries where abortion is illegal, and to work with local organizations on the ground in collaboration to bring women 12 miles offshore into international waters where they could give them abortions at sea using the abortion pill. And this was all in efforts to mobilize efforts that were already working on the ground to liberalize restrictive law.
Holocaust.
I think it's really important for every generation to remember, not just for this Holocaust, but for every Holocaust that's happening to even today. And for why are we not why is this worthless UN not going in and helping? I mean, saving so many lives. I mean, there's been so many lives lost in this world in the last, years from, I mean, people's, the inhumanity that exists in this world is, if you wake up and you think about it, it's overwhelming.
I think documentaries aren't one genre. I think there are many different genres within documentary. And the more that we can embrace that and people can tell different kinds of stories and different kinds of documentaries, and that's great. I mean, for me, I really would like my films to be more cinematic and more story-driven and less issue-driven.
Well, I've been president of Women in Film. I've been also, I was the president of New Day at one time when the steering committee. So,
How was that?
that was hard working with independent filmmakers, so everybody has an independent view. That wasn't easy. That was hard. Yeah.
Maybe that is.
Yeah, LA does. I mean, LA is kind of spread out, so even though there are a lot of people in Los Angeles making documentaries, we don't necessarily always see each other. But there are some great organizations that bring us together, like Film Independent is there and IDA is there. I mean, I think filmmakers really do need organizations like those and community.
Well, Sundance, how did that happen?
And Sundance is there too. Let me not forget that Sundance is there. Oh my gosh, that's, Sundance, the grant came about. I mean, we submitted just like everybody else. And we've been in production for a year, and they were really the first grant that came on board, and it was huge. I mean, it made a big, big difference. And I think once they vouched for us, other organizations then paid attention to us that maybe wouldn't have. So it really was, Sundance was really the first in to recognize us. And they've been unbelievable support. I mean, I've gone to many, many labs in the course of making this film that have enriched me as a filmmaker and a producer immensely.
So, what is film?
You have to always fight the system. That's the only way you're going to change it. It's been forever. I mean, it's one way of keeping, a sex down. I think people do it without even knowing it.
I mean, I've really won two things in my life, which is this, the grand jury prize at Sundance, and then I won an Emmy for my first film. And with that film as well, I was, in the back of the room. I kicked my shoes off, totally not expecting, anything to happen. And once you're in a festival, I think that, there is some wanting people to see it. There is a way that as a producer you have to wear different hats, and so you want to market it, and you want it to do well. It's not that you make a film and you don't want anybody to see it. So there are ways that films will be seen, and some of it is by winning awards or getting good reviews, or so you, in a way, you want to seek those things out when your film is made so that it can be successful. Number one, I would say go for it. I mean, the first thing is sort of, green-lighting yourself, picking up a camera, exploring, becoming proficient at a lot of different things. I think is very, very helpful, as much as you can, so that you are agile and sometimes can be a one-person band. And then to explore the things that she's interested in, but I would say do the most adventurous stuff when you're younger than the stuff that's furthest from home. It's more complicated now. There's more. I have, you think about, I have an entourage, whether they're with me or not, that is in my orbit and in my life, and I have to think about them, and I have to think about them in all kinds of ways, whether they have toothpaste and whether they've outgrown their shoes and their doctor's appointments and, even their teacher appreciation gifts or whatever it is. There's an entourage that I have with me that I am in charge of. and it's a big job and commitment, and I can't be so. I suppose it would be selfish, to go off and just completely immerse myself in my work. Oh, well, so just a few days ago, my 5-year-old lost her first tooth. And, it's hard because she's so proud, and I know how excited she is about it. And I know that she would be talking about putting it under the pillow and the tooth fairy and all of that. And I'm not there. I'm here doing work on my film and sharing it with audiences. And, there's a bit of heartache about that. So there is something sacrificed. It is not totally without sacrifice to do the work. That's sort of like, you can have it all, you can do everything. I mean, you can, but it's a balancing act, and there is a cost. No matter how much I'm working, I'm still also in charge of the laundry. There are certain things that are still in my realm of, whether it's a womanly duty or not, I still do the laundry. So, well, I will also have to say, just thinking about my husband has grown a lot in the past 3 years since, in this transition, as I've gone back to work. I mean, he's grown a lot in his ability to learn how to do stuff that he didn't do before, whether it's pack their lunches or braid their hair or do things that normally I would do exclusively. And that's really important. And when I think about my daughters and one day, what they will be and what they will want to do, and if they're in relationships, I hope that they will have partners that will be supportive and will be partners, and that won't say, that they have to do certain things, or that, that they can share the load. So that would be my hope for the future, is that that's certainly more just the norm. And specifically for my daughters, that's what I hope. I'll say is I hope also for better maternity policies in the United States, more more support for people with kids, and whether it's taking them to work or understanding that just more accommodation around caring for children. A lot of conversations before and after, and we would debrief, kind of download at the end of each day about what we'd seen, what we would do the next day, what we scheduled. We would often communicate in the moment with texts, actually, because we didn't have to talk to each other, and we could kind of, So that feminism was a bad thing. No, I mean, I think for the most part, my mother was pretty much a feminist, and if anything, I reacted against her sometimes because I think I wanted to be perhaps a little softer and a little less, just a little less hard, a little softer. And, I did want to stay at home with my children. And even now, I feel like for my mother, she gets very excited about my accomplishments. And, not as excited about the time that I spend at home with my children. And so that's her focus. And my focus is a little more blended and muted than that.
That's her next.
I learned a lot. When I started, I did not know how to do this. And it's been 7 years. I think, that was my education. I learned on the job. And I had familiarity with cameras. I had familiarity with the film world. I had worked in it. But everything from fundraising to production, now we're in the distribution phase. I'm learning that now because we're here. So I think it'll be a lot easier the second time around. Someone asked me the question, would this film be a different film if a man had directed it? And I thought that was an interesting question. I think there were certain times while filming where I needed to access a very specific empathy that allowed me to back off from situations. Could a man do that? Of course. But I know that that's what I used in order to read the room and to keep the trust of the people I was working with and filming, and to keep the trust of the women that we were filming. And to make them know that I wasn't there to exploit any of them. Interesting to see what a male director would have done with the story and to compare them.
Yeah. Yeah, and they mean it. I mean, what we're going to do about it, to get more women filmmakers making films, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm glad that people are talking about it. They need to keep talking about it. I mean, I think we just need to keep making films and talk. I mean, we don't need to sit back and be bitter about it, but it's important to acknowledge it and say that it's a reality and that it's really hard. And we have to look at what it will take to be sustainable, and look at what it takes to make a living at doing this, not just have it be a passion project for women that have rich husbands, which I think sometimes people feel like, the women who are doing it, that's their deal.
So tell me,
Restrictive law.
We might sell one a year. It's in tons of women's college, women's studies programs around the country.
Women Make Movies has been my fiscal sponsor, and they've been wonderful. They're a wonderful organization. They've been super supportive of the film from an early stage. Another organization that's been behind the film is Chicken and Egg Pictures, and they support women directors, and they've been huge cheerleaders for the film and also supporters of the film.
It's in New Day Film. New Day Film is a film co-op that is started out as it's men and women, but it's feminist co-op, social issue co-op of filmmakers from around the country. And it's something that you have to be selected. I mean, you apply for, and it's a real commitment because it is a co-op. And they're wonderful, wonderful people. And we share information every day. Most women are should be feminists, but I think that there was a period. It was feminism was started. The second wave really started in the '60s, I think, and then put it just like what happened with the first wave. They stopped a little bit because of we were marching against the war. And then we started in the '70s. We really started having conferences, and the NOW was formed, and all these women's organizations were formed to actually go and really lobby for women's rights. And we did a film about the 1977 conference. It was a political conference for women, where women from all over the country were elected to represent their states in a conference to talk about everything from, birth control to women's insurance to women's athletics. I mean, it was all there. Everything in life was out there, and it was Anglo women, African American women, Hispanic women, Asian women. I mean, it was all every lesbians, straight women, transgender. I mean, everybody was there to who had and to talk about different issues that affected their groups and affected them.
Are you a feminist?
Sure.
What is a feminist? I mean, I have no idea. I consider myself a feminist. I mean, I consider myself someone who is concerned and interested in the welfare of women and girls, and aware of inequality for women and girls, and someone who doesn't want to ignore that. So I think it's important to bring it to light whenever possible. I think maybe those are some of the things that make for a feminist.
And so
What does feminist mean?
Feminist means that you're pro women's. I mean, that's all it means. I mean, everybody should be a feminist. If, you know, you're pro females.
Okay.
I haven't. Is there a new wave of feminism coming? There is. Is that all with like the lean in stuff, or? All right. Yeah. Yeah, I could see
but
that.
I mean
Even I think women's mindsets have changed because I mean, we really had to fight. I mean, really fight, and we still do. I mean, it's, you know, I go to a, well, I was my name is Cynthia B. Francis, and the B, my family would always call me Bossy, you know, and so it's like, okay, you know, they don't like. I mean, that's who I am. You know, at a certain point, that's who I am.
Let's talk. It's like we were great at 1977, and then what happened?
Well, it wasn't just Reagan. I mean, Carter fired, Jimmy Carter fired Bella Abzug, and I don't think he, even though his wife was at the conference, enacted anything. I mean, the next step was really the ERA, and so we didn't get the ERA. I think we were 2 states, I can't remember, short of the ERA. But I mean, that would have been a, you know, a government amendment for equal rights for women, you know.
But I'm being a little more mindful of things like that.
yeah, because I don't think
So-
I don't.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you are always fighting to be taken seriously, and it's exhausting. And so there has to be. I mean, I'd like to hear how other women handle it, because sometimes I think, well, do I just have such a bad ego that I'm always fighting about things? Like, why do I have to be fighting to get my name mentioned or to get my film shown? And so maybe it's just a mindset. But it's still, you know, it's still sexism, still racism in this world. That there was, here's an African American community that Dallas, you know, think West Dallas was terrible. Like, how could you be driving in West Dallas? You're going to get shot. And these was wonderful people. I mean, just wonderful community. I mean, it was filled with poverty and drugs, but the people were really friendly and they were nice. And we talked to the community like, okay, we're not coming in as white filmmakers to do your film about you. What do you want? And it turned out after a couple of meetings, they really wanted something that showed them as people, and that people would know that they're like people everywhere. So we spent the summer following them around. And
So
For me in film, I love being in the realm of social justice, and I have a few ideas in my back pocket for the next project, and they do involve women working in activist roles. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but we'll see.
And so